Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Treasury Tuesday. I think we'll have a relatively short one today. I think there has been, there was a wave of activity. There was a wave of just lots of different things that we were discussing. I remember we were going over and we had some jam-packed Treasury Tuesdays, and I think a lot of those took a lot of the good content for now. And a lot of the work has been done. Now it's kind of sitting more in proposal form. So, again, this will be a relatively short Treasury Tuesday. So let's just go ahead and dive in. So, just looking at the recent events and news section, just looking at the proposals pending. Treasury Charter, again, that is up on the forum. The Bancorp proposal, which is to withdraw our funds from there based off of everything that's happening with that. Establishing a testing wallet, which is just allowing us to, one, create more efficiency with our own protocol, identify ways we can improve it, develop new strategies, and just maybe some other things that could come out of that we're not even aware of, but just give us the tools to do so. The non-core asset discretionary proposal. This is just saying if an asset is under $100,000, that we don't have to go through general governance to restake it, sell it, or rebalance that position. So that is up on the forum. And then the other one, which is more of an external proposal, is on the Optimism forum. This is one to secure just some phase one funding to really be a catalyst for activity there and to hopefully be a catalyst for securing new integration partners there as well. So would really love if people made their comments known. I think that the amount of comments and the amount of engagement they have on proposals is a big driver for the delegates and that community to determine who actually secures funding versus who doesn't. So again, really encourage you guys to go check it out, make your thoughts known, and just throw a comment on there in support. Hopefully. Um, so yeah, again, that's really all the news I had. I think it's been a relatively quiet week, relatively speaking. But maybe I'll open it up. Does anybody else have anything that's on their mind or that they saw in the news or other events that maybe are applicable to Rook or just general here or would be interesting here to discuss? Okay, great. Again, this will be a very fast one today. But moving on into the open floor section. As always, we'll have our protocol dashboard request link there. So if you have something that you'd like to see greater transparency on or some kind of metric developed, again, Stubs can help with that. So there's kind of the way to request that there. Speaking of that, we've also had Stubs develop, not we, but Stubs has developed a new liquidity dashboard, which you can check out there. We will be expanding this out over time. This will be more important as we hope to be improving our liquidity, which we will get into in the next section. But if you have any metrics or additions or changes that you'd like to see reflected within that dashboard, please let us know. We'd be happy to make that as comprehensive as possible. I guess another discussion I'd like to maybe open up the floor is I know we've done this with governance workshops. I know we've done some changes to our town hall, or previously called town hall structure, to where now is more of like an office hours setting, or just a general update setting, I should say. And so I'm actually considering moving Treasury Tuesday to every other week, just because I think right now engagement's limited. The amount of new faces we'll be seeing at any given time, just think just mostly due to market conditions, is relatively limited. And last thing I'd want to do is kind of just regurgitate the same pending proposals, the same type of news, and the same initiatives that maybe people aren't fully interested in. So considering moving Treasury Tuesday to be a little bit more robust and filled up every other week. So wanted to see if anybody has any hesitations with that plan. Or maybe
Matt, I'm actually going to voice support for this. I think it's a great idea, and as we're going to be seeing with the governance workshops as well. I think that at a certain point, this allows for kind of longer due diligence to be done during kind of the interim between meetings. I think it also gives us an opportunity to um, I guess move the Rook DAO status updates back to every Friday as well, to give folks an opportunity to give feedback there. And what we could also do is kind of make the community office hour just kind of rotate. So on the week that we don't have a governance workshop, it'll be on Wednesday. And the week that we don't have a Treasury Tuesday, we have it on Tuesday. And that way, we can still have folks gather for feedback on things. But The more focused kind of working group conversations that happen around Treasury Tuesday and what also would happen with governance workshops would have a more, as you said, like a more robust kind of flow to them with better depth. So I would support moving this, and we can talk about adding like another community workshop or something in its place if folks still want to chat on Tuesdays.
I appreciate that, Deeds. Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I have comments, but not on that. I think maybe I missed the ask earlier. I thought the discretion proposal was really good, and I was confused by two things. One's probably my ignorance. One I think is a real omission, and this is an omission that I think happened with the SOFON proposal initially, and I brought up in a governance thing recently, where the proposal is solving the problem now, but not looking at how the organization wants to set up structures to do things in the future. So, although there's a governance team chosen now, it doesn't give criteria by which people should be recommended for that team or how they would ever be replaced. And I don't think that's a stop the voting level issue, but I do think, especially since this is at least the second time with this kind of thing, it's something the community really wants to remember to start thinking about it. It's not just right now we need to take care of. It's setting up the structures so that as we move forward, things can move pretty naturally and easily in alignment with whatever the original vision was. And although you guys are committed to being here, you know, for all kinds of various reasons, including accidents, God forbid, people can't always stay where they're at. So it's a pretty significant thing to uh, want to remember. The other omission, not omission, the other confusion is just when I looked at the Dune analytics thing, I'm guessing it's just my ignorance of Dune. This is probably historic data, but it seemed like the data in the Dune Analytics in a link below showed uh, funds that weren't a part of the current proposal. And if it's just old data, that makes perfect sense. And that's just my ignorance, and I apologize for taking your time with it.
Yeah, no worries at all. I guess hitting on the first point. So you're, uh, I guess you're questioning around like specifically the official team section. So like you're saying, there's three parties right now that are kind of the Treasury team. I guess in name, not in like officially recognized currently. But you're saying, what's the process for saying who are these people and like why do they actually why are they the official team and what's the process for moving them if we feel like they're not actually doing a um, efficient or effective job. Is that correct?
Well, it's not just about removing them, although that is something too. I was just thinking more about replacing them over time if, for whatever reason, they happen to go away, right? So, from the current proposal, we have no idea how to think about who actually belongs on this team, nor how they're replaced, except to do a complete new proposal, which is doable, but I don't think is, the best organizational setup. Everything having to be a separate proposal.
Got it. Yeah, and that makes sense to me now. Um, Maybe give me some insight into what like a potential solution would be for this. I don't want to say problem, but this potential
So,
hurdle down the road.
in this case, um, some set of criteria, even if it's completely just based on the individuals chosen, that allows people to think about who are the people that make sense to be a part of the team. And so you guys do seem to like to do everything as a separate proposal, which can work. I'm in a different environment where certain things are laid out in a structure so that, we vote people on and off of different delegated responsibilities. And if those roles are expected to stick around, as in the case of the Treasury team or SOFONs, I actually think it makes sense to create the infrastructure so that it's not like unique proposals every time you need to actually fill a role. And there are many ways to do that. You guys have voting that, I don't fully grasp. So I don't even want to pretend to give solutions except to suggest that, suggesting that, hey, based on the expertise that we know people should have for this group, this is criteria that community should think about for people in this position, and suggesting that it be, you know what, ideally in my brain, these positions aren't even for life, right? Or proposal. They're consciously renewed in a certain time frame that makes sense. So for this team, I don't know, or SOFONs, I don't know if that would be 6 months or a year, but to me, it seems like the community should be willing to, take the time to acknowledge, yes, this person has done good work, or actually, we should be thinking about maybe replacing some of these people in some kind of period.
Got it.
So would you think that you would like to see a end date of when the non-core management, uh, kind of expires?
That would be one way of doing it. If you want to make everything a unique proposal, it doesn't answer the question of helping people understand who are the best candidates for the role.
So I think that second part is something we can definitely incorporate moving forward whenever there is, I guess you could call an official team. I think there probably should be an expansion around what are the qualities and qualifications that they have to be able to manage and have this delegation towards. So I think that's something that we can have, and then we could probably add a little blurb about if there are new members that are required to, not required but should be put onto this official team, here are the set of qualifications that generally we should have. I guess my question would be around if there is an expiration date, would that require another proposal to renew?
Well, I think Dietz was putting it in the context of how things work here, and so yeah, I guess. I mean, I still feel like I'm totally learning the ropes of how things really work here. The reason that people wonder why I don't comment on actual KIPs is, as much as I've tried, I don't have enough funds, so I've not acquired any Rook. So I have no actual voting rights. So I just feel like, my comments don't make a lot of sense in the context that I literally have no skin involved whatsoever. Um, but I like governance. I think what you guys are doing is interesting, and so I'm letting you learn about me, and I'm learning about you, and maybe eventually it will end up being a deeper relationship.
Gotcha. Well, I will say that if we had like kind of this, end date on these proposals that ended this discretionary delegation or powers, and that required another proposal. I guess that would be like the same as having a proposal to remove somebody or to add somebody else. So it would still require another proposal. With that being said, I think that there is some merit to adding more of like the qualities about these people that we should kind of incorporate in here to give people a sense of like, hey, should we actually trust these people? And if there is a replacement, here's generally the qualifications and criteria that we should be looking for. So I definitely think that's some low hanging fruit we can start adding into this and others. I appreciate your thoughts. And stop me if you wanted to talk through this more, but I guess hitting on your second point around the dashboard data being historical. Um, are you referring to the dashboard that's in that discretionary proposal, or are you talking about the liquidity dashboard that's in the open floor section? I was directed towards you, Aya, if you can hear me.
Sorry, I was getting back to my browser on the agenda. There's actually, I was just followed a link below, I guess, Cvx Unlock, and I have no idea because it looked like it's talking about some of the similar data, but maybe that's just, a point in time and an old point in time. But since the only date I see on that link refers to the KIP, I wasn't sure if it was an up to date view of data or old
Yeah.
data.
So, sorry, go ahead if you want these.
Well, I was going to say the Cvx Unlock looks like that was for another discussion that we were going to have.
Yeah. So, that dashboard that you're
and
referring
and
to.
I can talk about that a little bit. So the CVX link, that is basically all of the historical data that we have for our position. So, you can see the claims by round and things like that. So this is all historical for CVX. The liquidity dashboard that we were kind of talking about earlier, that is like Rook to ETH and looking at like Bancor and Uniswap and some of those other exchanges. So kind of very different, but yes, you're looking at historical data, historical claims from our CVX.
Got it. And that's what I wasn't sure about, just because looking at what I wasn't sure was just historical data, I saw a misalignment between what was presented in the recent proposal that we were just talking about and what was on the dashboard. So, like I said, sorry for my ignorance.
Yeah, I would say a good rule of thumb is that proposals at some point in time, they are going to be recognizing data at a given point in time, looking at the financial position at that exact period, while the dashboards are going to show more of like a real time update unless otherwise stated, like some of our CVX historical positions, which are always kind of moving and ebbing and flowing to some degree. But cool. Let's see. Anybody else have anything to say either about any of the proposals that we had in that first section or anything that we've discussed in the open floor section thus far?
Matt, I would just like to say that you know I'll add this to the forum as well, where I'm happy to vouch for the three folks that have been nominated for this official team for the non-core asset management proposal. Um, and I think that if you maybe added just a quick sentence on each of the three folks, um, I can also add my support under this as well for the official team. And if folks want to work through that as well, we can also dive into that, in
Oh,
this
I
or
want
go
I want to
ahead.
be clear. I wasn't questioning the choices at all. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm assuming the choices are perfect and great in the current community. I'm just saying that for future reference, uh, if and when people need to be replaced, there's no clear criteria by which the community is even suggested on how to think about it. So unless you're somebody who's like really core to labs in the process, you don't even know a why these people make sense, although it's easy to trust, and b how you would choose somebody to replace them if needed to.
Yeah,
Sure.
And that's the organizational perspective that I'm talking about. That's all.
yeah, and I actually really appreciate that. And I think there's solutions, and I'm trying to think of what's the most optimal one. And Jason, if you have any thoughts, but I will say that this is, I believe it's a delegation of powers. Like we have templates now for the type of proposal we want. I believe it's like a delegation of powers, and so what we can do is either have like that rationale section, but maybe Jason and you correct me if I'm wrong, but have like a more of an evergreen proposal that like talks about when we do have delegations of powers that empower some official team that we have some general framework for onboarding and offboarding them, um, that only requires like some level of soft consensus. And maybe we're missing some kind of soft consensus primitive that allows us to do that. But maybe that's the optimal solution without having to require subsequent kips just for team replacements or onboarding or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly. I like the idea of asking more information about, asking proposal writers to provide more information about the team and why they're qualified, which is great. I think we should also bear in mind, though, that there are some, like, this is a relatively, compared to the onboarding and offboarding of SOFONs, this is in a very different category. You have three people, and one of them could leave, and presumably the other two could continue doing it. It's for relatively small positions, so this isn't going to have the same level of onboarding and offboarding as the SOFONs. So I think it's also good to maybe be realistic about what standard we're applying and where it needs to be applied. But certainly something to think about.
Yeah, I guess materiality is always something to consider here for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Starfire, any thoughts or questions? It sounds like we'll have some edits to that like official team section. I know Deets will put some comments as well. But any questions about what those edits might look like from your perspective, or you think you're good to go? Because this is your proposal after all.
No, I agree with most of the comments that have been made. I think adding commentary to the official team and their qualifications to be in that place makes sense. On the like replacing or removing a team member, I mean the simplest solution in my mind is just have it just be a governance post. If the community feels strongly about removing someone, um, post a proposal and outline why. I think that's kind of the best way to do it.
Yeah, and you could also add that specifically to, there's a section in that template for recourse. So that would be a good place to put some of that as well.
Okay, great. Sounds like a plan then. Cool. So, anybody else have any comments about what we talked about before we get into the initiative collaboration section?
Just chime in that this style of kind of someone proposing to offboard isn't new. MakerDAO does this with certain parts of their governance features, where anyone's kind of welcome to propose that someone is offboarded. So just wanted to make that clear.
Great. We'll have to check it out then. Okay, cool. Well, let's go ahead and move on into the next section, which is our first topic is our Cvx Unlock, and I think Kyle's going to start taking this away. So take it away, Kyle.
Yeah, so as we rapidly approach our Cvx Unlock, this is something that we started talking about months back when we decided to relock it as well. Was that a decision could come down the pipeline here as we approach our unlock and kind of strategies of what to do, and kind of looking back at how things have gone since we relocked. And I'm going to drop some links here in voice chat. And so the first one I'm going to drop is llama.airforce, which is kind of like the standard for tracking CVX bribes and the current voting status and historically how things have gone. And if you here, actually, I'll drop a more direct link here. Looking at this chart where we have seen just a nominal decrease in the amount of bribes and bribes per vote locked CVX. What we've seen with that is when we were relocking previously, about every 2 weeks, we were looking at about $150-ish thousand in bribes. That's all the way down to around $25,000 every 2 weeks. Looking at this dashboard and kind of how things have been going, what we're seeing is, still a, some of the bribers have continued to bribe the same amount of that same native token, but the actual value of that bribe has obviously gone down with their token value, and as well as the overall market being down. But the overall market being down also eliminated one of the biggest ones, with Luna and Terra. They were either the largest or the second largest holder of vote locked CVX, and had been pretty much the largest bribe place as well. And since they've been gone, the value of each round lost about 30 to 40% of its bribe value on a biweekly basis. So I don't know if there's going to be a new entrant into this kind of bribe market that could even replace that right now. On top of that, we are in a really interesting position, as previously we, when we relocked, everyone else had kind of been able to make decisions ahead of us, and kind of, I would say, considered, it kind of influenced kind of what we ended up doing. And right now, it's kind of the inverse. Right now, we are going to be unlocked well ahead of everybody. Pretty much most of the other DAOs that hold CVX don't unlock until mid to late October. And during that time, we see two kind of insolvent or defunct protocols still holding Rook that unlock. First is Terra. Terra has like 2.1 or 2.3 million CVX that unlocks in October. And then we also have Mochi that also unlocks during that time as well. I don't have actual specific insight into what is going to happen, with Terra and the legal stuff. I haven't seen the latest on if creditors are going to have things kind of liquidated in terms of assets underneath the Terra management. But yeah, there's like 2.3 million from there. I think Mochi has another million CVX. I haven't seen the latest on them as well. So, for me, this seems like the right time to talk about staying agile and de-risking ourselves. I'm bullish on the merge, but there are also kind of troubling macro things that if we think about long-term risk management and how price action for kind of altcoins have been affected by the overall market. Looking at where we're at using the Cvx investment dashboard. Right now we are at a kind of a net gain versus ETH, factoring in all of our bribes, but just in terms of our actual buys, we're down pretty significantly. We're down about, I don't know, 30% versus ETH on our buys. That coinciding with decreased revenue every 2 weeks makes me feel like that this is something that there's further downside on. And if we were to strategically not unlock and kind of wait and see or start de-risking, we wouldn't have to make any kind of one single swooping move, but we'd retain the flexibility, for an advantage over folks for almost 2.5 months of being able to see where the merge takes the price and, we'd just be able to, be flexible. And so, the idea here for me is something that I'd like to recommend is that we don't relock our CVX. And so what that would do is that we miss out on, right now about $12,500 of revenue every week. And we start de-risking from the Cvx holdings. And that's my TED talk. So kind of open to pausing here and seeing what folks have to say on this.
Yeah, and I guess my kind of way to package it all up in a nice, pretty box with a bow is just to understand. Does anybody have strong thoughts about locking this position, or just general position maintenance in general?
I'll kind of take a stab. I'm kind of been quiet about this, but I've really been a proponent of getting rid of our CVX. I don't see any catalyst for these bribes increasing in the near term. As Deed said, there's a few crypto projects that are now insolvent that have CVX, so that's you can kind of presume that's going to be some forced sell pressure and kind of less bribes as well. As Dietz was saying, there's also really no new projects who are going to be entering this bribe space. So uh, yeah, I really want to see us de-risk this and put our assets into the combination that they were before this. Some USD, ETH, BTC. Yeah, that's really my input there.
To piggyback on that, looking at this, and this was something I tried to talk about when we were talking about relocking back in the day as well. I started thinking about our core functionality as a protocol, as a project, as a DAO here, and the the bribe economy and kind of liquidity market isn't really a core function of what we do here. It doesn't impact us working with and providing kind of that kind of reward for your order flow as a user here, or working with keepers. What all it really does is kind of impact I guess kind of non-native revenue sources. But even then, if you look at the opportunity cost of holding here, where we sold at the time like $9 million of ETH throughout that kind of 2-month period to acquire this. The opportunity cost of that is a large chunk of ETH that impacts, I don't know, our runway and things that we can do. But even kind of looking at this outside of the financial investment, this is something that I wouldn't say distracts, but I would say that it doesn't add to kind of what we're trying to accomplish, as even if you look at us as like a public good or a decentralized payment for order flow system or anything like that. This doesn't really kind of follow along that mission. I mean, even if we just look at the Rook token specifically, the factors that would go into creating a curve factory pool and still needing to hold on to this directional bet for CVX and hoping that the ROI still stays there, instead of us paying to get better emissions to hope for better liquidity on the Rook token. I think that there's a lot more kind of organic ways we could do that, and I'm sure that'll be talked about as we talk about Rook liquidity in the next section as well. But I wouldn't say that us using Curve for Rook liquidity is one of the top options for us right now, especially with the tokamak reactor that we have, and already our massive position in terms of share of the Uniswap V2 pool, which I think we own like 97% of already. So if we think about fee generation and usage of our assets, I would say that this wouldn't be one of the best long-term ones. So us de-risking from this and taking away from the bandwidth of delegating the responsibility to vote on a bi-weekly basis and kind of investigate what we can do, we could refocus those efforts to more kind of central mission items than what we're doing with it currently.
Yeah, a lot of good thoughts in the voice as well as the chat. Does anybody else have any strong thoughts about just this position, or being a part of this process in general?
The last thought that I'll have about this is that by de-risking, by not relocking and just holding it, that's already a major kind of de-risk. Because if we saw a black swan event over the all market, and we cut this for USD or something like that where no one else could, and the rest of the market continues down and we were able to exit, I mean, that's already a better risk management strategy than having 100% of our assets locked up anyway. Also, it gives us the opportunity to start exploring options of moving it off. I think that I think I saw something about OTCs. I'm sure that some of our folks that we've collaborated with on different convex initiatives would probably have an interest in gaining some more of that. And so, we could look into that stuff as well. But, to kind of sum up, I think that it's the right idea for us to not relock. And we can talk about execution of what that means later. But as we get to this decision date of the 4th with our Cvx unlocking and us needing to make a decision on withdrawing it from the contract or relocking it, I would be strongly against relocking any of it. And then with execution to be determined on what to do with the asset at a later date.
Okay, well, it sounds like there's nobody really super strongly in favor of relocking it. I think we'll have other opportunities for this to be brought up. But just as a reminder, due to the language, which I posted the KIP in the chat, but just to kind of clarify from the governance perspective around the execution of this position in either side, but we are worried about signaling to the rest of the ecosystem. I don't know how much of a risk of front running there is at this point, just because a lot of the people are locked in. But I think that especially making a move like this could signal things, and we want to try to always optimize our prices. So I think any opportunity we can signal as little as possible is probably the right move. But just as a friendly reminder, just the language under the KIP for execution of this is manager of the position. Actually, you want me to just post it? That's probably easy, right? Really, it's at the collaborative discretion of basically Keeper DAO, now Rook, core team, and the community, with the execution being performed by the core team. So, if nobody here is really feel strongly about that, we'll probably just have the core team and the Treasury team and the people that are closest to us, especially Kyle. Like if you look at the Cvx chat, it's or channel, it's basically all Kyle. So we'll likely leave the discretion up to these different parties. But again, if you have strong thoughts about this, please let us know, and we'd be happy to get you plugged in on this as well. Anybody have any thoughts on this?
Now, I would just add, if somebody is looking for extra details or wants to talk anything, they could feel free to DM me or chat in the Cvx voting channel as well. And I'm happy to kind of dive deeper into any of my thoughts or any of the data behind it as well and share some links. But yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, unless anybody else has anything to say, feel free to stop me. But moving on to the next topic in this section, which is really around our own liquidity pool. So this is different from like what we've talked about in previous weeks of improving our liquidity. These are some liquidity pool products that we have now sunsetted. You may recall, I don't remember, we'll see when the research was, but there's a link in that second bullet point under this section that goes back to our initial research on the usage of this. And as a friendly reminder, back in April, we did analysis to understand how much were these pools still being used from flash loan purposes by the different keepers, internally and externally. Because again, we didn't want to blow them up. And so what we did, again, there's a link to the research. But we tried to find the optimal balance where the highest return on assets would be. And so we went through that process and realized that we had vastly over-invested our capital into those pools, and that we needed to kind of pull those out to really maximize the return that we were getting off of that. And so we did that back in April, pooled about 90% of the funds, if I recall correctly, which is about, at the time, is somewhere between the 40 and $50 million. And now that we have this additional liquidity pool, where is it at? The dashboard that I showed earlier, that's in this agenda. We can basically understand that our wrapped ETH, our K wrapped ETH, is being vastly underutilized, and that there's an opportunity for us to take that idle capital and bring it back to the Treasury to do more meaningful things with it. And so what we're planning on doing, hopefully tomorrow, is withdraw some more funds based on usage, which you can see there, which should bring back, I think, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I have to go back and look. But a couple hundred ETH, which would be a nice little bonus there. So that should be hopefully occurring tomorrow. We have governance powers to do so, just based off of, I want to say KIP 19, which was a sunsetting one, in addition to the research. But high level, that's what we will plan to be doing tomorrow. Does anybody have any strong thoughts about that? Again, there's usage and research links in there.
No, I'll just say I support this. I think that the closer we get to fully sunsetting those products, the less we have to think about in terms of asset management as well. So I'm happy to support it. I think that those pools, for us, we're still hosting a front end for folks that need to withdraw the remainder of their assets. Matt, do you have any insight on the amount of non-treasury assets or percentage on them left in those pools anyway? Not that they really should factor into us withdrawing more, but just out of curiosity.
Yeah, let me pull that up. There's a lot. People have a lot of funds in there still. Let's see. Okay, this looks different now. Where did it go? Sorry, I got too many tabs open. So really, all of the K Bitcoin in there are others. All of the K Ether in there are others. I think Stubb said about 750 ETH, K wrapped ETH is ours. So still a lot of K wrapped ETH there that are others. I want to say we have about 400,000 K DAI and then about $1 million K USD that are in there. And I can pull up the Zapper that would show that as well. I can show everybody.
So us removing from those pools, I mean, pretty much we still have solid liquidity for them to use until those users pull out.
Exactly. I think there's an argument to be made that we can pull even, well, maybe not the wrapped Ether because we're pulling all that because there's a lot of coverage. I think there's an argument to be made that we could pull, roughly around 400,000 USDC and have a little bit of coverage and then probably a little bit of DAI, maybe not any DAI, but just a slight amount. And we'll be looking at that a little bit more deliberately as over the coming weeks. But roughly it's really the K wrapped ETH that's just being vastly underutilized, and there's way too much coverage in there. So yeah, it looks like Stubbs posted it there. So really, we're going to leave a little bit of a buffer because again, we don't want to be relying on external parties to kind of maintain, which I hope they do pull for their own sake. It's amazing that there's people like there's one person who has 100 Bitcoin in there, and it just blows my mind they forget about it. But yeah, we'll be looking at that a little bit more deliberately. But I think we should have coverage, even if we pulled out a little bit more funds.
Awesome. Well, I got nothing more on that. Full support, full steam ahead.
And that should be pulled tomorrow, hopefully. Really encourage you guys to go back and look at that research. It's really well done. And really cool. Our liquidity pools for sure. Okay, great. The ETH deployment execution plan. This probably should have been in the events news, but hopefully we'll be deploying. We'll be setting limit orders tomorrow for those. So getting that moving, getting those productive, and then we'll be continuing to make those more and more productive over time. And then moving on to the stablecoin working group. I think we've kind of hit on this, for a while. I think it's just more on the Treasury team and Weston Breeze and other people who have kind of tagged themselves as researchers. To kind of continue this, and so we'll just keep pushing async on that. But we're getting closer, and I think one thing that's just kind of throwing things into a loop is just seeing how low is right now, and just understanding like what our minimum ROI is before we're willing to assume another layer of smart contract risk or whatever it may be, just from a risk perspective. So again, as always, if anybody would like to get plugged into this process, please just let me know. We'd be happy to kind of plug you into the group. But does anybody else have anything that they'd like to say about anything that we've covered or just anything in general?
This is kind of unrelated, but yes, I would actually, I would like to get more involved in the stablecoin deployment if that's possible. You can either PM me or I can PM you or something. Either or.
Yeah, shoot me a DM. I know we're talking about a couple different things on the PyDAO's front, and Carnation, I just saw, yeah, send me a DM as well, Carnation. And I also know are you a Velodrome, Carnation? I think you are. Thought I saw you there.
He said plug me in. He's typing in voice chat.
Yeah. So we actually talked to the Velodrome guys as well. I don't know if that's where you were going to go, but we actually be able to exploring deploying some assets there as well. So yeah, lots of different fronts. And Carnation 50, happy to plug you in on this. Just shoot me. Both of you guys just shoot me a DM, please.
Yeah, sure thing.
Anybody else have anything to say?
Hey guys, so this is Borko over from, I'm a new member, and I just wanted to hop on this call, and it's probably not the right topic, but I just wanted to introduce myself and say hello. So if you guys want to hear a brief introduction, I used to work over at BlackRock in Toronto in Canada, and 2 years ago I started my own cryptocurrency company. And the reason I ended up joining this group, I spoke with Dean on Twitter, and I guess as human beings, we're inclined to really just join any groups that we feel have long-term value. So I just wanted to hop on this call, say hello. My name is Borko, and if you guys need any help in terms of community development, I guess that's one thing that I've noticed with the Rook cryptocurrency. You guys are extremely strong on the technical side. Obviously, we have some best-in-class mathematicians developing code, and you have a whole treasury that you're in charge of. But I think one of the weaknesses that I see, there's a little bit of there's just a lack of voice support on social media, really, for the Rook cryptocurrency. I think there's a huge opportunity for many of these new crypto enthusiasts, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. They just want to buy a cheap cryptocurrency that's ETH based, ERC20 tokens. So if there's anything that we can do just to increase exposure on social media, I think that would be something that the community should be thinking about, especially if we value as a group what we are doing together. So that's just my brief comment that I wanted to leave, and I just wanted to say hello. And yeah, I comment quite a bit on that channel off topic about metaphysics and all sorts of other conspiracy theories, and I apologize for that. I just try to drive some humor.
Well, welcome. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I've been pretty entertained, so yeah, keep doing what you're doing in the off-topic channel for sure. It's been enjoyable. And yeah, really,
I do want to say go ahead.
Go for it.
Well, so every comment that I make does, I think about stuff that I want to say to people, especially the ones that I don't know. So I think my comments about physics and metaphysics really just relate to, I think you guys should invest a lot more in the people themselves. Like, for instance, like on LinkedIn or any other professional social media apps, just, have people set up as an ambassador, right? Like a point of contact, just to increase the exposure, because all this hard work will pay off. But I think in the in H2, now that the market is a bit down, we don't have a lot of volatility, right? Just to onboard as many people as possible, just so you can get that energy, right? And then, in the next bull market, then you can possibly distinguish yourself as being like a top project on Ethereum for obvious reasons. So just maybe invest a little bit more about people, and I would just maybe even just suggest have like an ambassador program that people can say, okay, look, I'm a Rook ambassador. Whether you put your little ticker on Twitter or you're on LinkedIn, then you can just engage a lot more people. Just because it's a small community, right? And you guys probably know this better than me. Just to bring in a little bit more energy, right? into the project. I think that's very much needed.
I love this, and I think you've got a lot of the right stuff you're talking about here, and some of that stuff is live. Some of it needs to be improved as well. I would encourage you to join us next week for our community office hours, but we'll be working through those kinds of things as well. And we can always look at exploring those ideas. We can look at grants for things. We can talk about ambassadors. All of that stuff is awesome for topic stuff. I don't want to distract too much from the rest of Matt's call here, but I do appreciate you bringing it up, and happy to have a new member here.
Sounds good. Thank you for welcoming me. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Love the passion and energy, and glad you're here, and look forward to see what we can kind of cook up together. I encourage you to follow up next week, and that'll probably be a better forum to kind of get those ideas and thoughts into motion for sure.
I also I spoke with Dean, and Dean, by the way, is amazing on Twitter, right? I think one good thing would be just to have an idea who is doing what at the community, right? Especially for these decentralized projects, right? We haven't seen this in the history of mankind, right? So I'm trying to keep in my head who is doing what. Like I understand now, I've joined 2 calls. There's a core management team. There's a treasury team. There's this you guys are beginning to delegate certain responsibilities, but just maybe like a list of team, like a team chart. Because then what happens is if you have an idea who is doing what, I worked at BlackRock at 161 Bay Street in Toronto for 4 years. It's the largest asset manager in the world. But the reason BlackRock was so successful, they had the portfolio management, right? The portfolio management teams completely separate from the team that was called ICB, which is institutional client business. Just so when people jump right to your Discord, they should be able to contact a salesperson or like an onboarding person. Like you guys have like onboarding mods. That's amazing. But just have a map of who is doing what. And I think that's something that cannot be neglected, especially in this meta world, right? Everyone wants to have an NFT. Everyone wants to have an avatar. Just for the new people that are looking just to take a peek at the project without having to join a Discord group would be good. So maybe just an overview of the team members.
Awesome feedback there.
Cool. Okay.
Well, again, really appreciate all the ideas. I think we understand that there's definitely a lack of mechanism to help onboard people, educate them, and incentivize them to contribute. And I know, Westbury's and Above Average Joe, and especially want to call out Above Average Joe, who's over here from Bankless Down, has obviously, not created, but basically stewarded one of the better communities and most vibrant communities in the space. So, we understand that this isn't a problem, and we're definitely making steps to start laying the foundation to be able to kind of do those type of things. So really appreciate the comments.
And also, for instance, I would just say, as far as I know you guys are working extremely difficult, right, to maintain the infrastructure that is extremely complicated, right? I did my CFA, and I'm just now starting to grasp how this all works. But I think the leadership may need to reach out to some of the bigger fish in the pond, right? Like I know Sam C from Toronto, Canada. He's the founder of Ethereum Capital. I think just one large win really would set course for Rook DAO to be the best in class for, and hopefully we'll be around for a few more years, even though it seems like this bear market. I think part of the reason why they crashed the prices is just they're trying to destroy our spirit and our soul. Because many of these projects depend on volunteered work and contributions, but I think crypto has never been stronger in my opinion. So I'm bullish, but I just want to let people know, look, we got to think about the next 3 years, right? And just keep everybody intact and just keep adding more energy and more good people to the project, right? Because how many good projects are there on Ethereum, right? The reason I stayed personally away from Ethereum is because I knew there was a whole lot of stuff happening at the mining level, and then extraction of fees and stacking and price running and what have you. So really, I think the Rook is the only one. And Komodo, I just wanted to highlight, I did speak with the people from Komodo. Komodo is very similar to well, I wouldn't say very similar, but Komodo is essentially, they had developed a decentralized trading technology, but they're utilizing atomic swaps where you can peer-to-peer trade any cryptocurrency into another, but they're lagging a little bit because they don't have a stable coin and they don't have a big liquidity pool. So most of the trades on Komodo are like a few $100. But yeah, keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you very much. And I do encourage you, pop by next Wednesday for the community office hours so we can talk through a bunch more of this stuff as well.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome,
Sir,
awesome.
really appreciate it, and welcome again. Cool. Well, again, really appreciate all the energy and passion here. But does anybody else have anything to say more specifically about Treasury aspects, or just anything that they'd like to add to the agenda for next Treasury Tuesday? Okay, sounds good. One, I guess, housekeeping item, and Dietz can fill in the rest of the housekeeping items, but no Treasury Tuesday next week. Again, we'll be starting to move this to bi-weekly. But again, if something pops up that's pretty material that we need to have some soft consensus on or further discussion on, we can have that on 8/3, but otherwise we will just pick it back up on, I guess, 8/10, the next date? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, 8/9. 8, that's wrong. 8/2 is not when we're having it, and 8/9 would be the next one. So yeah, that's housekeeping on my end. Kyle, anything from your perspective?
No, just please come join us for governance workshop tomorrow, and we'll try and get a recording and recap on this, before the call tomorrow. And so just that, yeah, we'll see if we've got enough things to recap on Friday to host another Rook DAO status update. But if not, I would say we would just continue as planned, with the next status update being the following Friday.
Sounds good. Well, what I thought was going to be a pretty short call turned into a really great conversation, really great back and forth. So appreciate all the feedback and passion here again, as always. But really appreciate it, and have a great day, everybody. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Bye-bye.